Hello, Blues, and welcome to the Manchester is Blue Show. I'm Neil, and today I'll be taking you through a breakdown of the big Jack Grealish transfer. So, we'll be exploring not just his playing style and his strengths, but also how he fits into Pep's system, into our style of play, and what we can expect from him in the coming days and the near future. So obviously, as we all know, he signed for a record fee of £100 million, which is not just the British record transfer paid by a club, and therefore naturally also our record transfer for Manchester City, but also the highest fee paid by any club for a British player. And to add to this, he signed a big 6-year contract, which is reportedly worth somewhere between 200, 210 to 230,000 pounds per week in terms of salary. So he certainly is what you'd call a blockbuster transfer, and well, maybe not even the only one of this window for us. So what we'll be doing today, as I said, is breaking down his game, for which I'll be sharing a few images and visualizations with you to better understand how he plays and how he'll fit into our system. So all of the images that you're going to see are from a piece I did for Sportslens. The link to that will be down below in the description wherever you're watching. So be sure to read that as well if you want even more insight on the Jack Grealish transfer. So without further ado, let's get straight into it. So obviously, looking at his positions, last season he played 25 games from the start for Villa and had two more appearances off the bench. He missed a fair few matches through injury. So most of those he started out on the left wing, where he made 19 starts, and six others he played as a central attacking midfielder as a 10. So obviously this is almost all in Villa's 4-2-3-1, which is pretty much the only formation they really use. So he's either on the left of the attacking three or just behind the striker. Um, Now, with that out of the way, we'll explore how he'll fit into our style a bit later, because obviously we don't play a 4-2-3-1 too often, and certainly we don't do it as Villa do. But first of all, let's take a look at what he's particularly good at. So his main strengths that we know, which and like the first stat that comes to your mind when you talk about Grealish, is that he's the most fouled player in the Premier League. He had that title last season as he was fouled 109 times, which is at least 20 more than any other player in the league, even though he missed about 1,000 odd minutes of action because of the injuries I mentioned. So it shouldn't be any surprise that, as you can see over here in the fouls drawn, he is the highest in the Premier League in terms of percentile, which is what we're comparing here. We're comparing all these per 90 stats, and the fill of this pizza chart indicates the percentile. So obviously, the more full it is, the better. So obviously, besides fouls drawn, his dribbling is good. So 2.51 dribbles completed per 90, which is an average of per game basically, is very good, as is his success rate of 65.6%. So well, we all knew that he's very good with the ball at his feet. Now he doesn't take too many touches. It's a moderate amount, I'd say. On the higher side of the spectrum, yes, but not exceptional like his fouls or dribbling. So 58.61 touches, but for a side like Villa, who don't really tend to keep all of the possession, that's certainly very good. And in terms of progressive carries and carries into the penalty area, again, he's absolutely brilliant, as the stats show. Now, besides his ball carrying and dribbling, so like with the ball immediately at his feet, he's also very good in terms of passing, which, as we all know, Pep certainly likes. So, if we look at his passing numbers, again, passes completed is not that high, but part of that can be attributed to the fact that Villa don't have uh, all of the possession or the majority of the possession usually, unlike us who like we average easily over 55-60% possession in any game in the league. So even then, 35.59 passes completed per 90 is not bad, but what we're looking into more is the progressive passes, which is very high at 6.29, as well as passes into the penalty area. And also his creativity is very good. So as you can see here, with the 0.35 expected assists, or XA, per 90. He's among the best creators in the league. Now, for those of you who don't know, expected assists is a metric which basically is used to measure creativity and chance creation. So it's different from expected goals, because what we do in XA is we reward the passer and not the shooter. So, for example, if you take a different metric, like chances created, right? So now, in a chance created is when you play the last pass before a shot is taken. Now you could play the pass 30 yards away from goal, and then your teammate will shoot from 25 yards, and you get one chance created. Or you can cut the ball across the 6 yard box and leave your teammate with a tap in, and you'd still get one chance created. But in XA, what matters is where the teammate received the ball. So if he received it at the edge of the box with a bunch of players ahead of him, you'd get a low XA. But even if you played him one on one with the goalkeeper and he didn't even shoot, you'd still be rewarded in the XA. So it's the best metric to measure chance creation, and Grealish does really well there. So that's very encouraging. It's also quite good in terms of shot creating actions at 6.18 per 90, and all of that translates into goal creating actions too. So again, very encouraging signs. Um, to add to this, he had an 83% involvement in all of Villa's goal-ending moves last season, which is again absolutely phenomenal for an attacker to have 83% involvement, which is like very high. And to add to that, he completed 9.19 pressures per 90. And as you all know, we are often playing in very tight and congested spaces in the attacking third, as teams often like to drop into a low block against us. So that's good. As well as 7.50 progressive passes received per 90. So what this measures is his positioning in the attacking third to be able to receive such progressive passes. So again, very encouraging signs. But now let's take a look at something that Grealish is not very good at, and that's defending. So his numbers look really bad, which is 12.09 pressures per 90 last season, which put him way down in the 20th percentile for attacking midfielders and wingers in the Premier League. Now, obviously, Pep and our system is dependent on our pressing to be able to win the ball back quickly, so then we can circulate it around our defenders and then slowly push forward. But I would say that we're the best pressers in not just the Premier League, but also among the top in Europe. So we need people who are willing to work hard off the ball, and people who will chase it around, especially in attack, because that's where you press. You press with your forwards. So here, Grealish does not look good at all with just 12.09, which is very low, and certainly something that will not work for us. But there is a simple explanation for this, and that is that Villa used to defend in a 4-4-2 shape away from their 4-2-3-1. Right. So in both cases, they would leave Grealish in the front line along with their striker, who was usually Watkins. So if he was an attacking midfielder, he'd move to the left, and then the winger would drop back here. And if he was a winger, he'd move centrally, and then the attacking midfielder would drop back here. So in both cases, he was in the first line of Villa's defense, and they were not exactly that keen on pressing as us. So he didn't really have that much to do. But if you look at his successful pressure percentage, which is a pressure success rate basically, that's up at 31.6%, which is the 89th percentile in attackers. So what this means is that although Grealish didn't press too often, when he did press, he typically was successful. And that's because he only pressed when he saw a real opportunity to win the ball back. So although his quantity of defending was not too high, his quality was good. So there are encouraging signs there for us. Now all we need is a greater work rate from him, which will come through two things. One, obviously the rest of the side pressing, and obviously two, an effort on his part to work harder off the ball, which will come with training with Pep Guardiola and then the instructions he gets. So I wouldn't say this is that much of a concern, but maybe in the initial stages he will need some time to adapt from a relatively low pressing system at Villa to a very intense and high pressing system at City. But I'd say he will be completely fine. And if we want to mask this initially, we too press in a 4-2-4 sort of a shape. So it's just that the wingers are a bit higher and they'll be latching onto the opposition fullbacks. So in that system, what we used to do is we'd have from the two central players, we'd have one player pressing a center back, and then the other would just sit on the defensive midfielder, the number six, as you call it, and then prevent the balls from being played into his channel. So to block off a passing lane, basically. So that does not require that much of effort. So maybe in the initial stages, Grealish could just have that simple role as he slowly adapts to it, and that should mask the problem on a temporary basis until, as I said, until he gets up to speed. So as I say, it shouldn't be much of an issue. Um, so then let's take a look at the main part, which is how he'll fit into our system. So first of all, we I'm not going to look at our formation on paper, which is a 4-3-3, but that's absolutely not how we attack. We attack in a 3-2-2-3 sort of a shape, where we usually have the right back and two centre backs in the back line, an inverted left back, either Zinchenko or Cancelo, and then the defensive midfielder here. Then the two number eights, as you call them, they push forward, and then we obviously have the wingers out wide and the striker over here. And these two, they are often allowed to get forward, so it can sometimes even be a 3-2-5 sort of a shape. So it's pretty much a 5-5 principle, which is like the five players defending and the five players attacking. Mainly, obviously, it's not that simple, but that's just a quick overview. So now, if you'd watched his interview, not his interview, sorry, his inside, like behind the scenes access with the City Plus video, which I highly recommend. It was great content. There he'd mentioned that he would be happy in terms of positions to play anywhere across the front five. And I believe in Pep's interview before the Leicester game, so his pre-match press conference, he'd also said that Grealish is a very versatile player who can play across these five positions. So realistically, what I'd say, as we saw before, he mostly played as a left winger. So I like my personally my best option for him would be to play him out at left winger. But as you can see here, we've got a lot of depth. We've got Foden, we've got Sterling, and we've got Grealish. And it'll be hard to keep all those three happy in one position. So the alternative would be to play him over here in midfield in the number eight role. Now the issue with that, of course, is he hasn't done that of late, and I think the last time he did that was way back in the championship when he was a part of Villa's promotion season. So it's really going to be interesting to see if obviously in possession he'll be perfectly fine over here, but out of possession how he defends, especially with the relative lack of work rate we've seen from him. It'll be interesting to see if he can adapt to that role, but I strongly believe he can, especially with the way we press. As I said, it's a 4-2-4. So it's the three front men and one of the eights pushing forward to create a front line of four. So in that case, I'm very confident that Grealish can do that at least. So I don't have any issues there. We could see him over here in the left-sided eight role. I haven't marked him down here because I get the feeling that this is Kevin De Bruyne's position. He's absolutely exceptional in that right half space, where he whips those crosses in. So I don't see that for Grealish, sadly. Could be a false nine too, but he just hasn't played there before, so I don't know how he'll go there. And again, at right winger, the issue mainly for me is that Pep likes inverted wingers. Foden is a bit of an exception, but again, he does drive inside even though he doesn't cut and shoot. So on the right, obviously we've got Mahrez right now, who's in the form of his life, and I really don't see Grealish competing there. So these are the two positions which I'm looking at to see where Grealish fits in. Obviously, we've got Foden and De Bruyne who are set to miss the initial stages of the season, among others. So this will be a key time for Grealish to, just mark down a position in the team and find the best role for him, because there will be spots open everywhere. So it'll be interesting to see how that goes. Now he'll also have to make adjustments to his style of play. So obviously he's the most fouled player, as I said, with 109 fouls drawn last season. But we don't need him to draw fouls because we're not very good at free kicks, first of all. And even if he wins a penalty, there's a good chance we'll miss, sadly. So we don't need him to draw fouls. And also because Pep, he likes to keep up the tempo, he likes to keep the game flowing and rhythmic and all of that. And when you have a break in play, you're just giving a chance to the opposition to just time waste and slow you down and throw you off, which is not what we need. So he needs to work on releasing the ball quicker, and like stop drawing in so many challenges, which at Villa was a perfectly good thing, but here we don't need it. So just a slight shift in the game. Um, Also with this, he'll also need to shift his mindset a bit, because at Villa he was the star, he was the main attacker, he was the star man of their attack. But now he's got all these big names around him. He's got the Fordens, the Sterlings, the De Bruynes, the Mahrezes, all of them around him. So now the focus is not just going to be on him; it's going to be on all the others too. So he's going to have to adapt his mindset in that way. But this can also be an advantage because at Villa, we often saw teams defending against him by double marking or even triple marking him. Now, with all due respect, at Villa, he had the likes of, Trezeguet or El Ghazi running around to his sides, which very good players, but they're not as good as a Foden or a De Bruyne, right? So they could get away the opposition with sending two men behind him. But against us, if you're going to use two men to mark Grealish, then I'm sorry, there's a guy called De Bruyne next to you, and if you're leaving him free, then you're in big, big trouble. But then again, you can't just leave him alone because if you leave him 1v1, you're finished. I mean, almost any defender in the league will be easily beaten by Grealish 1v1. So, the concept I'm talking about right now is what we call gravity. Now, I'll give you an example from not Villa, but from the Euros, which shows that even out of Villa's system, Grealish had a very high gravity, which is basically like attracting the opposition defenders towards him. So, in England's match against Germany, um, he came on as a sub and he had a great impact of the bench too. So he was the man responsible for the first goal. So now, if you look over here, you'll see that Kimmich, mind you, both teams were playing a back three system. So the wing backs were supposed to mark each other on paper at least. Now Kimmich had done a great job marking Shaw all game, but then came Grealish, and then he just drove here with the ball, and you can see where Kimmich is. He's been attracted by Grealish's gravity over here. And ideally, you'd want a centre back dealing with him, which is why you can see Rudiger here too. Like all the German players are almost bunched together here. That's the effect of Grealish. That's the gravity he has. Now, once he's done that, he's freed up Shaw to make a run, and then he obviously has a simple cross, and then Sterling turned it in. Now, this is in an England team which obviously only got together for the Euros and does not work together all the time. But for a City side, which has the likes of Foden and De Bruyne and Mahrez, who are all training together, playing together week in, week out, forming a great chemistry between themselves, if you leave your some your different player out open here to double mark Grealish, so suppose this is Foden, for example, in our 3-2-2-3 system. If you leave Foden here and try to double mark Grealish, it's almost a guaranteed goal once he gets there and then cuts it back because there will be people making this run too. So it's just a nightmare for opposition. I mean, if he does play as an eight, just imagine being a Premier League midfielder who's got Grealish to one side and then De Bruyne to the other. It's just it's I don't know what to do. I don't know what you do at that point. It's just sad really because you can't stop them. You can't stop even one of them on their day. You've got both. It's just you're done. Um, Now another thing he will have to change in his game is as we saw with Villa, he was very high on both the progressive passing and progressive carrying numbers. But for us, we've got the ball progressors in our midfield. We've got the Rodris, we've got the Cancelos or Zinchenkos, or even Stones from the back, who will progress the ball. So our front five, their main job is to just do the attacking. So now at Villa, if you look at his touch map breakdown, then he had 849 in the attacking third, but a very just 200 less, 645 in the midfield third. So it's a very close split between these two. Now for us, obviously some will naturally directly shift into the attacking third because of how we dominate territory, but he will also need to consciously focus on not dropping deep and letting the ball progressors or the designated ball progressors do their job, and he can stay in the attacking third and do all the work in the final third, the chance creation, or even the pass before the assist, or obviously the shooting and all of that. So this is another aspect of his game which he'll have to focus on and not really drop too deep anymore, because if he does that, he's just a bit of a liability really, because we're losing one man from attack. So again, I'm sure he'll do this very quickly. He'll adapt very quickly. Just a few training sessions, a couple matches, and then we should see all of this happening very very quickly for us. So that's about it for his style of play and how he'll fit into our team. Now, obviously, as we saw, there were some discrepancies between how he plays and how we play, like his dropping deep ball progression or his pressing. But at the end of the day, we all know that Pep knows exactly what he's doing, and this is a record transfer which he's given the go ahead for. So I'm sure he has a plan. And as we saw with the conversation he had on the morning of Grealish's announcement, they both get on quite well already, and I'm sure they both know exactly what they're doing. So there's nothing to worry about there. But what I will request all fans to do is to be a bit patient. And even though he's cost £100 million, he might not have that instant first season impact. He might not rip the league apart this year. I hope he does, but he might not do it. And the reason I'm saying that is it's not always easy to make the step up from a side like Villa, which, with all due respect, are a mid-table Premier League side, to one of the best teams, and not just the league by far, but also in all of Europe, and one of the most tactically astute teams, one of the most dominant teams in terms of possession. It's quite the difference, and you have to remember he's played at Villa his whole career, so it's a new environment for him for the first time, and also it's a big difference in terms of quality and playing style. So he will need time to adapt, and it's not just him. All of our transfers usually need time to adapt. I can't think of anyone apart from maybe Diaz, who's a defender, but I can't think of any attackers who've instantly clicked in Pep's system in the last 5 years. The best example I've got is Mahrez, who stylistically is very close to a left-footed Grealish who plays on the right side, because they're both great with the ball, great dribblers, very good at cutting inside and shooting. They're quite similar. And obviously, Maris was at Leicester, who again didn't have the most possession dominant style of play, but obviously were very good. He was also very good. And similarly for Grealish at Villa, not the most possession dominant style of play, but he's very good, and he has got the quality. So now for Mares, he didn't really like burst onto the scene, if you will, in the first season, right? He had a bit of a slow start. Even in the second season, he got off well, but then he kind of dropped later on. But last season he was absolutely phenomenal. He tore the league apart. Even in the Champions League, he absolutely ripped them apart. So you give them a bit of time. You give all our new signings, especially in attack, a little bit of time to adjust to this big step up, and I'm assure you they will do great things. So yeah, hopefully we'll get to see a bit of Grealish in the Community Shield. I've heard he'll be on the bench, so maybe that'll be his debut. And well, if all goes well, I know it's a glorified friendly for many, but maybe Grealish gets a trophy of some sort on his Manchester City debut. So yeah, here's to hoping for 6 great years for Jack Grealish in a sky blue shirt, and well, maybe in a couple more signings this window. I don't want to be greedy, but you never know. So yeah, that's all from me. I hope you enjoyed this video. Be sure to leave a like and subscribe to us if you did. It really helps us. And yeah, until the next time, farewell.